Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys about something that I find really kind of amusing on one hand, and I also find it a bit troublesome on the other. And it's this tendency, and this is, I notice it in a number of other YouTube channels as well as just reading online everywhere. There seems to be this really bizarre idea among enhanced lifters, particularly guys who are kind of in the bodybuilding niche, that they're concerned that consuming too many carbs, not too many calories, guys, not too many calories. They're talking about just in the context of their macronutrients, that consuming too many carbs will make them stack on too much body fat and create insulin resistance for them. Now, a lot of people who know anything about anabolics or anything about nutritional science are probably laughing at this point. And yeah, that sounds really comical to anyone who knows basic biology, or particularly human biology. It sounds really hilarious, but these guys are actually serious. They actually believe this is the case with their own personal anecdotes and stuff to go with it. Now, the interesting thing, Lobliner, and I like to trash on Lobliner a bit, or Pocket Liner as we like to call him, he even said in a video that when you combine high carbohydrate diets with androgens, magical things happen. And that's because carbohydrates amplify the anabolic signal pretty much of people who use gear. It amplifies it. There's a strong synergy between increasing your carbohydrate intake and the muscle that you gain from this. Furthermore, what do we know from various studies? We know that the little bit of human de novo lipogenesis that occurs can be blunted by these substances. What? In other words, under normal conditions, humans don't readily convert carbohydrates into body fat. We don't do so at an appreciable rate. There are situations in which it occurs, but most athletic, active people, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say anyone who's lifting weights really hard at least 3 days a week and doing cardio and eats a relatively clean diet, you're a fairly athletic person. You're not a morbidly obese, sedentary person who eats Pop-Tarts and pizza and Coke all day, right? Those are the people who actually can store carbohydrates as fat. Usually people who are at least 100 pounds overweight and sedentary. Those people can. Or people who eat thousands of extra carb calories for extended periods of time, more than about 48 hours straight, every single day, 7 days a week. But normal people don't really do so at an appreciable rate. Well, what we know is that anabolics turn that off even further. In other words, someone who is using these substances is not physically going to be able to gain body fat from carbohydrates. It's the fat they're eating in their diet that causes it. These people are only going to gain body fat based upon the amount of fat that's in their diet, almost irrespective of calories. And that's an important take home here. And that is the reality. You can look at large amounts of data and see that. In other words, if a person is bulking on these substances in significant quantities of them and they eat a very, very low fat diet, they're going to gain almost no body fat. It's this obsession these guys have with, we need to get extra healthy fats and stuff in, when they're on substances that block their ability to store everything but fat as body fat. See the problem there? And a lot of these guys will then be like, you got to really moderate your carbohydrate intake when trying to gain muscle, even when using XYZ. That's absurd. That's absurd. We know that normal unenhanced people gain less body fat on really high carb diets versus diets that are higher in fat on the same calories. They gain less fat. The higher your carb intake, even as a demographic in any culture, the lower the obesity rate tends to be in that culture. Now you start combining substances in the body that shift nutrient partitioning, meaning they promote your body to burn fat easier and to store carbohydrates as muscle glucose and to get a IGF-1 extra response from the carbohydrate intake, then you're not going to have these sort of problems. It's just going to accelerate muscle gains. And you've got to wonder, and that's the thing I've noticed. I've noticed a common trend also. Look how many of the guys who promote this concept stay leaner, but they're really, really small. And that's a take home. Again, I was looking through a few channels who are promoting things like SARMs and anabolics and other stuff. The amount of stuff that a lot of these guys use relative to their size is shocking. Like, most of them are really, really small for what they're using. Like, I would expect most of them to have 15, 20, 25 pounds more muscle on them than they do. But they don't. They don't. And I think this is a big factor in it. It's the fact that they've been caught up in some really weird bro science as far as nutrition goes. And even though they might be training, even though they might be putting these substances in their body, they're not supporting the anabolic processes in their body nutritionally, and they're not getting the most out of it. And that's kind of a trend that I think we see in gyms, because how many of us out there, we talk to kids today and you find out how much stuff they're using, and you're like, why are you not 30 or 40 pounds heavier? How are you as small and as weak as you are using that much stuff, putting that many things into your body? And it's their food intake. They don't eat. They're scared of carbohydrates. They try to do stuff like, I'm going to eat just almost an all-protein diet. And I'm only eating 200 grams of carbs. And it's like, you're 195 pounds and you train almost every day and you're eating 200 grams of carbs. How do you even maintain your body weight? Like, how are you not losing weight? Like, how are you even staying 195 on that? Are you like eating jars and jars of peanut butter to get more calories somehow? It blows the mind. But they get these ideas in their head with this, and what you have happen are all these people who rely so heavily on exogenous substances, and then you start looking and they have incorrect ideas on diet and training, and then they wonder why they're not bigger. Or maybe they don't wonder because everyone else they know is small also who uses stuff, because they're all eating 200 grams of carbs a day also. I'm sorry, but in my experience, even working with natties and being around strength athletes who are natty, I have never seen any of them cut their carbs that low and actually get respectable in their size and strength, even the guys who are completely clean. And you start dealing with substances that impact nutrient partitioning, carbohydrates should be the least of your concerns. Like limiting carbohydrate intake. No, limiting fat intake should be a bigger concern. You're not going to get fat from eating a really low fat clean diet when you're using stuff. It's not going to happen. You might gain water, but that's because you're bloating from the stuff you're putting in your body, which is a real deal. But it baffles the mind. And they also have this idea that it's actually going to create insulin insensitivity. All right, you don't get insulin insensitive by eating starchy carbs. All right, insulin insensitivity comes from being sedentary, from being really fat, and none of these guys ever get really fat. All right, just because your abs aren't visible doesn't mean that you're fat in the level that we're talking about with metabolic syndrome. Like, you get to where your abs aren't visible and then you gain another 100 pounds. You get up to 210 and your abs are blurred, and then you bulk to 300. All right, then you're going to have a problem. Right, then we might be dealing with metabolic syndrome. Then we might be dealing with insulin resistance. But the biggest contributors in your diet are fructose and large amounts of saturated fat. All right, really high fat diets and diets really high in refined sugars basically are the dietary factors that cause insulin resistance. It doesn't happen from eating lean proteins, and it doesn't happen from eating starchy carbs or even fruits. All right, you can't eat enough fruit. Actual fruit, not fruit juice, but actual fruit to really develop insulin resistance. And here's the other thing. What lifestyle factor affects it the most outside of diet? Weight training. Weight training. Furthermore, these people are using substances that improve muscle insulin sensitivity. And they really sit around worrying about they're going to develop insulin resistance. Well, there might be some substances that can contribute to that. That's another topic. But you're eating a clean diet, if you're eating a diet low in refined sugars, low in fat, you're not eating junk food, you're working out, you are not going to become insulin resistant. And you're sure as hell not going to become insulin resistant from eating such a number as low as 300 grams of carbs a day. Like, anyone out there who thinks that they're training hard and they only eat 300 grams of carbs a day, I could promise you're probably not training as hard as you think you are. You probably are a lot weaker, and your tonnage is probably lower than it could be. And it's largely due to your diet, the insufficient diet giving you the training fuel you need to actually stimulate the growth that you need. Again, going back to the point, It's a reason so many of these guys are so small who blast so much gear. And I think a lot of it leads back to their diet and bro lore really giving them bad advice on what they should be eating. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.